I think I'm going to start, actually, we're going to have a practical evening. We're going to actually work on skills that allow us to facilitate our own healing and clearing in this age of reality TV and constant bombardment and overstimulation. The only person that's looking out for you and taking care of you nowadays is who? And the Theosophical Society, right, as well. So that's always good for us. So if you could close your eyes for a moment, I'm going to show you something that I do with every client that I work on with trauma. If you haven't figured it out, we're in the millennium of trauma, yes? And we're going from the age of narcissism to the age of empathy. How many of you, as I asked before we close our eyes, how many of you are empaths? You know what an empath is? Empath is a person that can actually feel the pain, experience trauma of another person, sometimes when it happens, sometimes afterwards, later on. We all have some level of empathy, but those of you that are empaths particularly, and I target a lot of that training in my work, need to really take extra care of yourself nowadays. We're moving from the end of a very trauma-conscious sort of explosion in awareness to the age of empathy and increased awareness of our relationship to the person next to us and how we can feel and internalize their experiences, particularly as empaths. So the first thing I always teach is the exercise we're going to do now. So let's close our eyes for a moment. If you could take yourself to a beautiful place in nature, either real or imaginary. If you'd prefer a place at home or some place from your past, sometimes it's a safe being instead of a safe place in nature. If you could take yourself to that place, particularly if it's in nature, see what that looks like. Take a moment. And again, we're talking about energy, sound, vibration, color. What is your favorite color in that image? As a child, our first language for safety isn't words. We don't get the words right away. It's actually vibration, sound, and color. The color of mommy's eyes, the color of her hair, the shape of her face. Sometimes it's daddy or another caregiver. But what's your favorite color from that image? Now, a very simple but very effective tool is to breathe color. I encourage you all to do so. We do 16 breaths a minute minimally. So at 4 minutes, we've done at least, 64 breaths. And we now know from research that at 50 to 52 repetitions, a word, phrase, or image goes into the subconscious because that's how children learn vocabulary. At 52 repetitions, it enters the 95% subconscious mind. So take a moment to allow that color or colors from your safe scene. Breathe that through your whole body. Some people like a waterfall from their head down. If you're in Maui or the Hawaiian Islands or Fiji, you might want to picture a beautiful waterfall. Water is very flowing. Allow that color to wash through your whole body. Maybe from your head down. If you're like me and you're a bit cerebral at times, you might want to go from your feet up and find that color moves much more fluidly from your feet up. Or you can breathe in the color. And in the ancient text in Hebrew, ruach meant breath, wind, spirit. So you can actually breathe in the colors through your body. So invite those beautiful colors to flow through your whole body. Your assignment will be to breathe that color through your body for at least 4 minutes when you have the opportunity. As I said, I was on the elliptical the other day and I think I breathed 23 breaths a minute. So after 3 minutes, I'd done 69 breaths. Anything at 50 to 52 goes into the subconscious and will be anchored in your body. So breathe in those beautiful colors. If you ever start getting anxious, fearful, or upset, once you've anchored that color in your subconscious, if you simply begin to breathe the color, if you have sounds associated with it, bring in the sounds of the waves at the ocean. It might be a vibration or another sensation that comes to you. Invite that through your whole body for the next few minutes. And for the next few days, anchor it in each time you think about it. Then if we're ever upset, start to have an anxiety attack, get distressed, if you breathe the color, your 95% subconscious will go to that place and your 5% will usually go along with it. So take all the time you need. Let's take another breath or two. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So today we're going to talk about a toolbox of healing. One of the things I'd like to start with, though, is that the single greatest compromise to our immune system, to our health, to our dreams, our goals, our relationships, our well-being, is the fact that as much as we'd like to be mindful, how many of you read about mindfulness or are familiar with when I talk about the concept of mindfulness, about optimal health being in the present moment? Have you ever wondered why we're not in optimal health if we're not in the present moment? Well, the answer in part is my specialty, is memory. Your body is 100% memory. The difficulty, of course, is that you and I go in and out of memories, we estimate. And you can check it today if you'd like in the next hour or so. Every time you space out, leave the room, get triggered by what I'm saying, if you make a little note, click it for yourself, see how many times you're actually able to stay completely present with me and how many times you check out. Because the truth is, nobody in the room here today, I think, is going to hear the entire presentation. And the reason is, as much as we like to believe we're very mindful, you think you're a good listener? Are you a good listener? Raise your hand if you think you're a really good listener. Okay, we'll test you today, all right? Because the truth is, a word, a phrase, a sound, a feeling, and we go into trance. The technical term is trance. And we leave the present moment. And they're estimating that you and I do that minimally, 15 to 50 times an hour. We check out. I think it's amazing we have relationships then when you think about it, right? She says a word that reminds you of your father, you say something that reminds her of her mother or whatever, and you're aggravated or triggered, and you're no longer listening to the person you're with. When I did workshops in Japan for a number of years, they would require that you do a 3-day listening skills workshop. Because in cultures where you might have fragile boundaries, or you're taught to honor your ancestors, your town, your job, your culture, your siblings, your parents, but if you honor yourself, you're selfish, then the smallest infringement on a boundary, and you're triggered. And so our boundaries become very fragile. As a result of that, one single word, phrase, sound, and you're not in the present moment. We now know from SPECT scanners, single photon computed tomography scanners, that when we trigger a negative memory, we actually go into the same brainwave pattern and same state of physiological distress as the original event. You already know that in your experience. When you go into anger, sadness, hurt, frustration, tension, tightness, shortness of breath. I've had cases where I've reframed with a client the first asthma attack, they never had asthma again. The shortness of breath wasn't asthma, it was the memory of asthma. Any migraine sufferers? How many migraine sufferers? Anybody? I see 2 hands going up. Most migraines are traumatic relives of the original moment of encoding. How about panic attacks? No, don't raise your hand on that one. I don't want to start anything. Keep breathing your colors. You'll be just fine. But anxiety attacks, a feeling, a word, a phrase, a sound. If we start getting anxious, we're reliving the same anxiety attack often over and over again. And so what we've discovered, if we can learn to be present and talk to the moment of encoding, and that's why we're talking about the languages today, using energy, sound, color, vibration. There are many variations of each of those, obviously, whether it's music or the tone of voice or the vibration of a hand. Color. Color is our earliest language as a child for emotional safety. The color of mommy's eyes. In fact, object relations theory in psychology says that your self-esteem first came through the eyes of your mother. And some of you are like, well, that explains what happened to me then, obviously. I remember mother's eyes most of the time. What was that look she gave you? My father was Asperger's. And so when we have an Asperger, I don't remember his eye color, honestly. He lived 80-something years. I remember his brownish, but he didn't make eye contact most of the time. He didn't look up. And if the eyes are capable of transmitting photons of light, then our earliest messages for self-esteem often come through the eyes of the person next to us or a loved one. And at 52 repetitions, it goes into the subconscious. So our self-esteem is built through, oh, you're so lovable, you're so cute, you're so adorable. We keep hearing this over and over. We reinforce it through sound, through color, through the eyes of the parents, and that becomes the foundation for our self-worth and our identity. that color, that sound, that feeling, that vibration. It really is all the same thing, isn't it? When we're just speaking different languages, it's all about energy. So one thing we've learned is that when we're stressed or overwhelmed, the body-mind is capable of pausing the flow of consciousness. So the purpose of all of these languages is obviously to restore the flow. And it doesn't matter which language you use as long as we can restore the flow of consciousness. Now, what do I mean by that? The very first breakthrough, which when I was talking to Dr. Mariko Tanaka at San Francisco State, and she studied with Milton Erickson, kind of the father of modern hypnosis. And Erickson, she said, was always looking for a way to talk to the body that would allow us to access memory. And she saw when I worked, she said, I think you found the body-centered access method for identifying where and how we freeze. And she then took me to Japan, where I taught the technique for several years. My main international training site was the city of Sendai, Japan, which then turned out to be the largest city near the tsunami, earthquake, nuclear disaster. So I couldn't believe it when I saw that tsunami wave going into the city and surrounding the buildings and Hotel Sendai in the background. I'm like, that's where I was training trauma therapists for years. So when that occurred, there were 37 trauma therapists trained in the city to begin coping with it long before we knew the event would ever happen. So there's certainly a wisdom that looks out for us, isn't there, in the universe, that tries to take care of us, even anticipate our traumas sometimes before we're traumatized. In fact, did you know you're alive today because all of your traumas, in a sense, were anticipated? What do I mean by that? You and I are designed to freeze the flow of consciousness always at the millisecond before we're overwhelmed. So if you're a quantum creator, which we all are, and you're creating this body, this experience right now, the truth is, if I frightened you and scared you, therapists run amok at the Theosophical Society, okay, pulled a gun and scared you, what would you do? Well, you might try to run up and disarm me or something of the sort, but the truth is, if you're really overwhelmed, your nervous system slows the movie down. Ever go into slow motion before a car accident injury? Not only do we start slowing, we back up a millisecond, take a picture, we freeze the flow of consciousness. Now, I don't know if we've ever really talked about sufficiently or come to appreciate what it means to be able to pause divinity, pause consciousness, pause the creative act, whatever words you use for that. Pause the quantum energy field. What we know now is that you have the ability to stop the movie, back up a millisecond, take a picture, freeze your brain waves, your physiology, all of the tension in your body, contain it and store it like the icon on a computer. So your body, with 1,000 neurons per square inch, becomes the repository of a static sound, a static vibration, a static color, a static feeling, a static energy. And so whatever language you're going to use to restore flow can be effective at returning the river to flow or returning the flow of consciousness. That's why we're talking about all these languages today. But the truth is we need at least one effective language. If we don't, we know that in the 95%, if the trigger is still intact, whenever that smell, sound, feeling comes up, we're going to react. Some allergies are this way. A psychiatrist here in Chicago actually did a session with a client that was dairy gluten intolerant and saw that she kept reacting over and over very strongly to dairy and gluten and said, how young might you be? First of all, I'm going to show you how to do the technique. When you think about that allergy or feeling, where do you feel that? Oh, it's my stomach. It's like a burning sensation. Is it inside or outside? Oh, it's inside. Does it have it takes 13 trillion brain cells to scan you, and you do it in about 3 seconds. Thank you, Deepak Chopra. I didn't come up with that one. So we scan our body, back up, freeze. Okay, 13 trillion brain cells scan us. It's inside. Does it have a shape, size, or color on the inside? It's a tightness, a knot. It's burning. Does it have a weight, temperature, texture? Well, we said burning. It's kind of heavy and burning, and it's tight. Anything else about it? It hurts. It makes me anxious. So 9 questions that we focus on. Where in the body? Inside, outside, shape, size, color, weight, temperature, texture, and is there anything else? It burns. It hurts. It makes me anxious. How young? 10th question. How young might you be when you first feel that? She went back to a memory. I'm 5. Can you see where you are? I'm in the kitchen. What's happening? My daddy's drunk, and he comes in. What happens then? He starts hitting my mama. He starts hitting mama. What happens then? I'm afraid we're all going to die. Now, when you hear that feeling, I'm afraid we're all going to die, that overwhelmed emotion statement, your fight, flight, freeze mechanism is kicked in. Adrenaline, which is your limbic, hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal axis, kicks in to protect you. We back up that millisecond. When adrenaline goes up, by the way, you've now known for 83 years now, I believe it is, that when adrenaline rises, what goes down in your body? When adrenaline rises, T-cell production, thymus cell production goes down. Med School 101. When you're stressed and you're overwhelmed and you're pushing too much through your body and overstressing yourself, your adrenals go up and your T-cells go down. T-cells measure your immunity, your immune system. So as the adrenals go up, T-cells are dropping, and then we get sick over time. Exactly, we get ill. Your body won't let you get away with that. You can't keep producing adrenaline indefinitely without getting ill. And I'm researching right now where we get ill is often related to the weakening of our immune system or a trauma to a specific site. And what I'm investigating right now is how many viruses have you had growing up? Had a client who was diagnosed with PLS, primary lateral sclerosis, and underwent a trauma to a specific area of her body related to the trauma, but it had chickenpox, mononucleosis as a teen, Epstein-Barr, a little bit later, which is common to have Epstein-Barr, and then also common to have shingles after that. She had 2 major bouts with shingles, 5 major viral experiences, which I believe, as I'm seeing these patterns occur, is weakening the immune system, and then a trauma to a specific site in the body activates significantly one particular location, and suddenly we have an autoimmune diagnosis of some sort. But we were predisposed by perhaps our childhood illnesses. But we now know it's no longer nature-nurture by itself. They're not separated. It takes the activation of the mitochondria around the cell for even a gene to express itself. You may have BRCA1, BRCA2. You may have the BRCA genes. That doesn't guarantee breast cancer. It takes the activation of the mitochondria of the gene. The gene has to begin to express itself for us to become ill. What we're looking at is how can we use the languages, sound, energy, color, feeling, vibration, to deactivate, to de-stress the body on a regular basis, to stay calm so that we do not get ill. How can we stay optimally healthy? And so she said to her, how young might you be when you first feel this? I'm 5. Where are you? I'm in the kitchen. Daddy's strangling mommy at the dinner table. What happens then? I'm afraid we're all going to die. Now, at the time that happened, the body froze all perception, not just her head, but all the sensory data in her body. And along with that, what was in her stomach at the time? You want to guess? Macaroni and cheese. There you go, right? So, macaroni and cheese, any kind of dairy, gluten, it's going to generalize. The body generalized then to dairy gluten intolerance. And suddenly she can't eat dairy and she can't eat any wheat or grain products and so on. And sure enough, dairy gluten intolerant. When she reframed that, she was no longer reactive. PTSD. What was in your stomach when the bad things happened? And you wonder why we have limitations in what we eat. Some of you know one example that I gave. It was one of my favorite examples about how a single memory can shift your decision-making, your willpower. A woman came in, one of my clients came in one time and said, I think I'm going crazy. Why is that? I can't stand men with brown pants. That could be a trigger for some of us today. Can't stand men with brown pants. Christmas is coming. I have to bring out the dorm reindeer Christmas arrangement. And she went into a 20-minute rage about the reindeer Christmas arrangement. She said, my brother called today. He's bringing his handicapped son for Christmas. And when I think about that child, I want to strangle him. And she says, I've never harmed a child, much less a handicapped child. What does that say about me? And she said, also, and she looked down at the floor kind of embarrassed, I haven't been able to stop eating peanut butter compulsively since he called. So that's when the therapist says, I think you are going crazy. No, I'm just kidding. You don't say that to your client. But the brown pants and the peanut butter, this is getting a little strange, isn't it? I mean, I'm not sure how you coped with trauma in your life, but So let's do a little Sherlock Holmes thing on this, right? What time of year was she abused? Christmas. What was the perpetrator wearing? Physical characteristics of the perpetrator. Don't tell me reindeer antlers. Physical characteristics of the perpetrator. Handicapped. Handicapped uncle abused her in the boathouse. First thing she saw when he brought her back into the house after he abused her, smiling at her, looking at her, reminding her what time of year it was the reindeer Christmas arrangement. Which of the 9 kids who inherited the heirloom Christmas arrangement? She did. And I think the trigger, because when she got to my office, she didn't remember that it had happened. She only had the protective triggers coming up. And we can do that for years. We can have protective triggers coming up with no memory about why we do some of the stranger things or why we hate certain things and love certain things. We have no memory about that. And she did not remember until she began to work with me. So, but to make her stop, and so what had happened is the brother called that day and said he was asked if it was okay to bring the handicapped stepson for Christmas. And she had just put the arrangement on the table. And I think the combination of the arrangement and the memory of the handicapped uncle came together and her body started reacting protectively. It brought up all the somatic triggers. And then, of course, the last trigger was to make her stop crying and not tell anyone about what he had done to her. He gave her her favorite food at that age, which was peanut butter. 5 triggers, 1 millisecond of consciousness. How many stress trauma memories have you stored in your body? How many triggers, smells, sounds, feelings do we react to? Now, let me say a couple of things. Number 1 is there are no bad colors. Okay? Colors are all good. They're all positive. Black can be calm, elegant, absolute. Some of you know in my history I was a Catholic priest. Technically, I still am. They can't undo it once they do it to you, actually. So that's to my advantage because I still am very active in the healing ministry that I do. So, but black is calm, elegant, absolute. Red is power, passion, energy. I applaud you and your red Target shirt. I shouldn't be marketing right now, but anyway, Target, in the last 50 lectures, actually it's about 46 lectures I've given, I've only had people wearing red 3 times. What is it about power that we're afraid of? We got some red on today. That's good. What is it about power? Is it anger that we're afraid of? We're afraid of expressing or losing it? Are we that stimulated? I do believe that since September the 11th occurred, that we were witnessing, and I've not talked about this much publicly, but I called it the Uncaught Perpetrator syndrome, that after being so violated, governmentally, nationally, personally, the Twin Towers, financially, the Pentagon, security compromised, after 10 years of not catching the primary perpetrator, we built anger collectively and unconsciously. And as a society, road rage, we saw anger in the decade the few years that followed, moving. I think the first one was corporate corruption we went after by 2002. Then we went after the churches and the religious systems that had ministers that were perpetrators and abusing. Catholic Church had its run of challenges. All of the churches had their challenges. We then went into the educational system. We went into some of our politicians were caught, and confronted. And now it's all the way back to the entertainment industry where it started in the first place. So I called it the Uncaught Perpetrator syndrome. When we build up anger at not being able to capture, hold accountable the person that abuses us, what do? For every trauma that occurs, you split. Part of you goes into fear and shame. Part of you goes into anger. The amount of anger you hold will tell you how much trauma you're still carrying. The amount of fear and shame you hold will tell you how much trauma you're carrying. Traditionally, some of us went to fear and became codependent and afraid of abandonment, and we went into the fear mode. Some of us went into defense, anger mode, pushed away, counter-dependent. Don't get too close to me. Don't upset me. Don't trigger my mechanisms. Counterdependency, the variant of that on a personality level is this is the narcissist, the angry push-away controller mechanism, and the codependent moves to the other side. It's kind of an avoidant, dependent personality disorder. My father was Asperger's. He was very quiet, shy, introverted. He didn't do anger. I was not very comfortable with anger. So I can see where we as a society have not been doing red for the past 20 years. On September the 11th, we had a little trouble with resolving our red. We stayed angry. And now it's coming out with our unconscious, unresolved trauma memories. So what do you do with that? That's where we need all the languages we can get, all the help we can get in order to manage to survive our traumas and eventually to release them. We have found some breakthroughs that allow us to release these stuck points and static forms of energy. You ever seen somebody go into a flashback? You ever seen the eyes? I was working on a young girl. I was talking with a colleague of mine today, actually, about a client, a 14-year-old girl that I worked on. And she had seen 8 therapists. We weren't sure that we were going to be able to work with her. Her mother brought her to me. I put a hand on C7, the primary maternal nurturing point. It's also a memory access point. I always ground my clients before I work. I put my hand on C7, and she went into the most aggressive REM state I think I've ever seen. And the memory was a family member on drugs putting a gun to her head a few months prior. And the state in her eyes, you could see the static state. If you ever seen somebody go into flashback, you'll see the eyes in a static state, how they're holding the memory. That's why EMDR and some of the other techniques that are out there about eye movement and releasing that from the eyes. Your eyes are positioned somewhere when a trauma occurs. There's a static, I think that's probably how the EMDR is possibly working, is that we're trying to find the exact point, tap it, and release the static that's being held. Your eyes were always in a position somewhere when the trauma occurred. Your brain waves are in a certain frequency when the trauma occurred. Your entire nervous system in all 7 chakras were at certain frequencies when the trauma occurred. And what we've done now is find a way to transmit the missing frequencies. We know how to get the flow going again. We don't have to change your history. You're at the Theosophical Society in 2019. How much safer can you get? You don't look really enthused right now, though. I don't know. Some of you are pretty happy. That's because 5% of you knows you're at the Theosophical Society. Where's the other 95%? Where are you hanging out each day? If we're actually reliving our trauma memories or our stress in our body, we want to restore the flow. We want to reintegrate. So how do we do that? So what we've learned to do is how to transmit the missing signals. My favorite is color. But you can combine it with breath work. How many of you have done some kind of breath work in the past? Breath work, meditation. How many of you do yoga and do the asanas, the breathing and the pranayamas, okay? And the breath work that goes with it, okay? So breathing is the key. In fact, breath might be the key because we know that when you're scared or the therapist pulls the gun at the Theosophical Society, what's the very first thing you're going to do? Gasp and hold your breath. Uh-oh. And we freeze. We think that, it's interesting because with my background in ancient texts and Hebrew, Aramaic, it's very interesting. Creation occurs through what? God breathes into man the breath of life, ruach, and man becomes a living being. Breath, they saw that this invisible force, they didn't know it was oxygen and nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon dioxide, all these exchanges of gases that are taking place. But they're like, oh, something goes in, something comes out. If that stops, we turn to dust. I did archaeology in Israel for 13 years. Some of you know that in my previous presentations. But with the anthropology and the archaeology, it didn't take a genius to figure out when breathing stops, we go back to dust. We found lots of burials, and I actually excavated a man my height, my size, my age, who was killed when a cave collapsed on him at 3750 BC. I excavated the cave. I directed the excavation. I was a field supervisor. I somehow knew days before we found the body there was somebody down there, and I was the one that suddenly I see 2 front teeth looking up at me, and I was like, there's somebody down here. I called the forensic anthropologist from the Smithsonian over. She looked at it. Yeah, that's a man. There's somebody down. There's teeth. At least there's teeth. Well, it was connected to a body. And so we excavated this man with his hand raised, and his most amazing moment in my life, his hand raised, his eyes looking up. Like, uh-oh. So I think the cave collapsed on him and trapped him, obviously. He died there. And it was at around 3750 BC. It looked like a skeleton. They said that it died in the 1940s. The skeleton was intact because the cave had regulated the temperature. And he was frozen at a moment of perception, looking up in the air. And I was like, wow, okay. So trauma is a moment when we freeze the flow of consciousness. The day I excavated that body, by the way, my obsession with archaeology was gone. So somebody said, did you dig yourself up or something like that? I said, well, leave it to the Catholic priest and I'll get the past life thing. So in order to make the point, they probably go and make you dig yourself up. It's like literally in order to try to get the message. So anyway, whatever happened that day, I remember after being obsessed with archaeology, the day I removed the skull and sent it to the Smithsonian for a study, somebody said, are you coming back next year? And my whole need for archaeology was gone, completely gone. So I was like, that's really a possibility. Only claustrophobic reaction I ever had was crawling through a cave in Israel. So places you visit, trips you make, people you meet, you never know what the deep underlying meaning of that will be. But I can tell you can always go to your body and find out. If you can't breathe and you're holding your breath and you're frozen, I might have been holding my breath kind of frozen for 5,750 years. I'm not quite sure. That's a long time to be holding your breath. But we do want to restore the flow of breathing. And so we discovered that when you put in that missing signal and can establish the flow of energy, we release that. And so, with various kinds of examples, I'll give you one with chronic pain, that there was a woman who actually had came up to me at the end of a lecture one day and said, I've had chronic pain in my legs for 37 years. I'm thinking about leaving treatment. They tell me I have nerve damage in my legs. I was in a car accident when I was 7. And I may have talked about this case before a couple of times, but it started me into my first book, actually, The Healing Dimensions. The case is recorded there. And she said, I've had pain in my legs for 37 years. Any chronic pain sufferers? We got some chronic pain folks here, 5 or 6. So I talked to her and I said, there's a chance that the pain could, I know the scene, the trauma scene is very powerful. It was when I froze at that moment prior to overwhelm and my legs were in pain. I said, then there's a good chance that some of your pain could be from the memory. And that we can release. I can't undo the nerve damage piece. That's a different field of medicine, the neurotherapies that we're doing, and acupuncture might help. I said, but we can try to work on the consciousness flow. Said, okay, I'll stay another day. Came into my office the next day. And again, the verbal technique for level 1 trauma, single moment, freezing, is, and we're going to see how color, vibration, you can use different channels too, whatever works for you, color, sound, feeling. So I said, when you feel all this, when you feel the trauma, where do you feel it in your body? My legs. Is it inside or outside? Deep on the, she said both. I'm sorry, she said both for her legs. Does it have a shape, size, or color? Heavy, weight, lead weight, like boulders, big boulders. Do they have a color, weight, temperature, texture? Cold and heavy boulders. Do you have cold, heavy boulders on your legs? Anything else about them? No. How young might you be when you first feel cold, heavy, black boulders on your legs? She says, I see the number 7. And the way memory comes up in your body as you focus is age, then location, then the event, and then the feeling that made you freeze. I said, I'm 7. Can you see where you are? I'm lying by the interstate. We've been in an accident. That's where it got interesting because usually we freeze before impact. But in this case, that's not the trauma. This is why we call this body-centered, client-centered focusing our therapy. So that we need to talk to the genius who knows why you froze. And who's the only one that knows that? Even if you're members of the same family witnessing what looks like the same event, or everybody witnessed September the 11th, or Oklahoma City bombing, when, where, how you froze is unique to your computer and will not work as a reframe for someone else. But you can find the moment you froze, that specific millisecond, and put in safety. So we're not here to change your history. We're here to change how the 95% subconscious stored your history and is maintaining the pain. And using those languages, color, sound, feeling, vibration, you can make tremendous progress in easing pain in many cases. Not always, but in most cases. And in some place, like this case, maybe eliminating it. So I said, you're 7. Where are you? Lying by the interstate. We've been in an accident. What happens then? And you continue asking your body until it gives you the millisecond of freezing. When we tag that moment of freezing, it changed medicine, science, and psychology. And the reason it did is because we now know how to target where your quantum perception froze, where you stopped creating reality and froze it. You paused it. Realize how much power you have if you can pause consciousness itself? Some say God is consciousness. There's only one mind. What does it mean that you can pause the mind, the flow of consciousness? So anyway, I said, okay, you're 7, lying by the interstate. What happens then? My legs are crushed and I can't move to get help. What happens then? Everyone is unconscious but me. I still don't hear an emotion. I still don't hear a feeling. What happens then? Cars are passing by. I'm beginning to wonder where we're going at the time, right? What happens then when cars are passing by? No one's stopping to help us. What happens then? I'm afraid we're all going to die. There it is. You hear the moment of freezing? I'm afraid we're going to die. At that moment, adrenaline hits your system. You survive. You make it to the Theosophical Society in 2019. But what's the problem? In 95% of your mind, where are you? You never left the interstate. And 95%, that's what your traumas are. 95% of your mind, you never left the classroom. You never left the bully. You know, you never left the injury, the accident. And sometimes we don't know why we hurt. I had a client, her left hip was hurting and her leg froze and she fell down to the floor. And the doctor said, we don't know what's wrong, stay in bed for 6 weeks. Well, then her leg atrophied afterwards. So when I worked on it, I said, let's just undo the moment when you fell down with no pain. Sensation started returning to her leg. She said, now the only problem is the doctor didn't have me walk for 6 weeks. So the leg started atrophying by itself. If I had started reframing and moving immediately, and by the next day, she had conscious control of her leg back. She was moving it, though it was stiff and needed a lot of physical therapy because the doctor had frozen it then for 6 weeks. And then she had trouble with it for the next 10 years until I met her. And I'm like, this should have been reframed immediately. When a pain frightens or scares us, we take a picture and we freeze. And so we reframe that. Anyway, back to our client with the leg pain. So I said, okay, if we could go back and I said, if nobody was injured, nothing worse happened. Nobody was stopping to help and I thought we were all going to die. I said, that's your moment of freezing and your legs were hurting at that time. Let's see if some of the pain is just from the memory. So what I said was, if you could change that, what would you see happen? Oh, somebody would get on the old mobile phone and call for help sooner. Can you picture that? Yes. What happens then? They rush us to the hospital. Take all the time you need to show that you can create safety at the hospital. I picture that. How does it look? She said, pretty good, but my 7-year-old's legs are still hurting. What are you hearing? You're hearing her saying, my scene is not finished. It's incomplete, therapist of mine. Please help me with this. So when I get stuck, I go to the genius, the expert. And which language would you like to use? Color, sound, vibration? Some people tone their solutions. Can I make a sound? Sure. Oh, okay, great. Take all the time you need to do that. Others are like, most of us use color. Because your first language as a little child for safety wasn't words. You didn't get the words right away. It was color. Color mommy's eyes are here. So I said, what color would you, and before I finish asking the question, what color would you send your 7-year-old self to take away pain? She says, I see green, which in my books I talk about. Green is often physical healing. And it's also heart. But green, she ran green through her body. I said, how does she look now? Oh, she looks great. Says she looks fine. Is there anything else she needs? Strawberry swirl ice cream. I was like, what? She had her tonsils out at 3 and she had a great ice cream experience. So she's taking this literally. She wants her ice cream and that's a good sign. We're in the hospital. Said, let's give her ice cream. She gave her ice cream. I said, how does she look now? She looks great. Anything else? No, she's fine. What color frame would you put around a picture like that? And all she said was, I see green and gold. Let's move green and gold through your whole body, especially through your legs where you felt the big black boulders. So you get to practice memory repetition exercises so you don't get Alzheimer's. So, we get to, kind of stay clear and keep sharp with our memories. Okay, good. So through the legs, especially where you felt the boulders. How do you feel now? She said, fine. Now I'm from Louisiana. When you ask a person, how do you feel today? I feel fine. I was like, okay. On a scale of 0 to 10, what's your pain level? She said 0. I was like, okay. She must not feel the pain unless she's moving. So I said, stand up and walk around. She's starting around and said 0 to 10. What's your pain level? I was expecting a number. She said 0. I was like, okay, must be intermittent nerve damage, right? I said, how long been since you had no pain in your legs? How long has it been? She said 37 years. I said, nonstop? She said, yes. I said, so then I was getting nervous and she was getting angry. She's like, do you mean to tell me that I may have been given narcotics for 37 years for what is a memory-based pain in the 95%? I said, I have better than that. I have clients, in my first book, I recorded a case of where they surgically operated on her in a desperate attempt to stop her kidney pain, severed the nerves to her kidneys, and after they severed the nerves, guess what? Pain was still there. Came back in the same pain cycle. So she flew back to Johns Hopkins. They poked her with needles. Do you feel this? Do you feel this? No, 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 no. We've done our job. Your current body is numbed out. Your nerves are severed. What's the problem? We're a very multidimensional beings. The pain wasn't coming from her current body. The pain was coming from a 5-year-old that was being molested by a family member. And during the abuse, he bruised her left kidney. And that created the kidney pain. And when we reframed the memory, the pain stopped. Actually went to the other side. There was a second memory, and he bruised her other kidney on the other side. And so finally we realized the body-mind is incredibly powerful. It can maintain. That's why the somatic psychology by itself wasn't enough. Because you can lose the limb or the organ, and if the memory is intact in a holographic system, what does that mean? If a fragment of a hologram is intact, in physics, it contains the whole thing. So a sound, a smell, a feeling, a sensation, and you're back there again, even if the limb is gone or the organ has been removed. We call that phantom pain. It's actually holographic. A technical term is holonomic memory. So we're talking all these languages, color, sound, feeling, energy, sensation. What's the advantage? They're all now believed to be holographic languages. So one sensation moved through your body, color, a smell, a sound can transmit the whole image. We can transmit vast bodies of information. So when a child draws a picture of physical or sexual abuse, they'll go to red and black almost every time. No light, no safety, black, minimal, anger, violence. If you have them redraw the picture, they go to their bright, nurturing colors. Try to present this to the American Academy of Art therapists. They were a little confused and kind of snooty. I didn't get into the conference that year anyway. I'm not sure if they could handle what I was talking about. Not all therapists like the fact that you could heal some things easily. And it completely freaks out some of the doctors. Okay, we know that already. Our physician, when saw her pain go away after 37 years of meds, you know the funny part is when we asked the insurance to pay for the session where I stopped her leg pain, they were like, you have no empirical evidence that this new technique is going to produce any appreciable results. You don't have any empirical data. I was like, she's not in pain. The leg pain is gone. They're like, well, they wouldn't pay for the session. It gets ridiculous sometimes, doesn't it? Anyway, trust yourself. So color, vibration, sound, the colors you see. Now, I told you I have an eclectic history. Let's talk about color, my favorite language. The colors you're seeing right now, the truth is nobody knows how you're seeing me as a three-dimensional holographic object somewhere inside your computer right side up right now. Now, the problem is that photons of light are bouncing off of the larger particles and waves. I just ate a little while ago. There's more particles and waves to bounce off of. But anyway, at the Indian restaurant too. So anyway, so bouncing off, imprinting on your retinas upside down, and you're recreating me as a three-dimensional hologram somewhere inside your computer right side up. So thank you for letting me in. That's very kind of you. I appreciate that. But it means you have control of the imaging process when it's in your computer. That's why you watch your relatives or loved ones suffering or in pain. It can become your pain. Because the whole thing was originally occurring where? In your computer. Level 2 trauma, patterns of abuse. Watching my mother dying of breast cancer, watching her labored breathing, when I went to get in the elevator afterwards, being an empath where I feel people's pain, the door started closing, I started getting claustrophobic. I've never had burdened labor breathing in my life. I realized I was internalizing her stress from her breathing. We can take in the pain of other people as our own. Don't think for a moment we don't take in other people's suffering and pain. We're all connected. That's our responsibility for healing ourselves. Christine Page, a lot of healers say when you heal yourself, you're healing 7 previous generations and you're moving forward 7 generations. I've heard that repeated 3 different ways. I've heard somebody say 5 generations. But I've had several different books, healers, and they're studying epigenetics, and they're finding it can skip from the grandparent, show up in the grandchild. We're learning how the genetics is being transmitted. They're doing it with mice. 5 generations of mice are carrying the same weird pattern, repeating it. So, clearing your pattern. Why would it not work the same way? You clear the metaphor from your timeline. Maybe you're going forward, maybe you're going backwards, maybe you volunteered to help clear your lineage in this lifetime. No pain, I think, is without value when we heal. No resolution is without significant value when we make the effort to heal. All those languages. So we want to move the colors. We want to move this out. Now, color, I have, like I told you, kind of an esoteric history. In 1984, I did a research project with Tom Seaver, NASA's archaeologist. I was trying to get the Catholic Church involved in thermal infrared multispectral scanning for archaeological sites. You can see how well that went over, right? Okay. So they didn't quite get it. They're like, you're doing what? With who? Kind of thing. Actually, it's funny. NASA thought I was there to develop a Vatican spy satellite system at the time. So they were treating me with kid gloves, kind of thing. Oh, Vatican spy. Okay, what is this about? It's like the Pope doesn't have a clue I'm here. Doesn't know what's going on. The bishop's freaking out. Anyway, like he's doing what? That doesn't sound like baptizing babies to me, kind of a thing. Anyway, one thing I learned from NASA's archaeologist, Tom Seaver, and their scanners is that every form of matter has a unique spectral fingerprint. So you, with your 7-color projection system, your DNA, your history, what you ate today, your body, your individuality, every image of the movie you're creating is entirely unique. Therefore, back to the child story, child drawing a picture of physical sexual abuse, they kind of know. Go to blacks and reds. If you have them redraw their picture, that unique picture the way it should have been, they'll go to their bright nurturing colors. The crayons are standard, but what they're creating is not. If you have them picture image the way it should have been, close their eyes, move a color, feeling, sound, vibration from the safe scene, which we say every fragment of a hologram contains what? The whole thing. So the sound, the color, the feeling, the vibration from the corrected image carries the whole thing. When you move it through the part of the body holding the minimal reds and blacks, in physics, when you take red and black and you add all the missing colors, what do you get when you put them all back together? White light. We're not changing your history, folks. We're having you prove to your own physiology, your body, that you're no longer trapped in the history. If you can move safety through your body as a sound, as a feeling, as a vibration, as a color, if you can move that through your body, when you put those colors back together, it goes to white light. How do I know? Because I've replicated it 150,000 times. I've done 30,000 people. I've done at least 150,000 memories as an empath. I was one of the primary therapists for Oklahoma City bombing. The guys trying to swim under the building, rescue kids in the daycare center. You don't want your hand on the C7 access point of that person. I mean, that is a nasty, unpleasant trauma. But I learned to clear myself, and I had help. I had people, healers, who kept me clear when it was passing through me. But when that pain leaves, I feel it. Worked on somebody today, felt a sharp, stabbing physical pain leave. I knew they had a really bad back injury. They had a pain that hurt them. Because I don't hold it anymore, it just goes through me. If you become clear white light, it has nothing to resonate with, so it doesn't stay with you. So as an empath, your greatest safety, get clear. Clear your traumas. Clear the past. You know all the colors that your mom and dad, all therapy is reparenting if you haven't figured that out yet. You know all the colors that mom and dad, life, your boss, the religious systems, whatever, didn't give you. And all the mystical traditions agree that the colors you seek are now located where? Who has all the colors? You do. The Buddha said it's always been within you. Christianity, Judaism, the messianic presence that's amongst us collectively, or the whole Jesus story, I'm going to die, leave so I can send my spirit, so the light of the world is within you. You have the white light. You have the colors within you. And the truth is, I've never had a client that if I worked with you long enough couldn't find your missing colors. Which means that in some part of your being, you have what? You wouldn't be alive in the room today if you weren't in touch with white light, which is perfect love. In some part, even the most remote part of your being, there's a wise part of you that isn't connected to source, to white light and perfect love. Which means that you have all the colors. So it's not about me giving it to you. It's not about, we're in the age where you're becoming your own medicine woman. You're becoming your own medicine man. You have the colors. It's taking the time and getting the discipline to meditate. I call this, mindfulness with regards to memory. check and see if the pain in your body is a memory. Go through my little 9 question. Is it inside, outside, shape, size, color, weight, temperature, texture, anything else? How young might I be when I feel that? I did that for a cyst on my ear. I'm going to show you how to do it on yourself. I had a cyst on my ear. I was like, it's not life-threatening. Don't do it. I was like, no, I should check it out. So I did it out loud. When I feel the pain, where do I feel it? My ear. Inside or outside? Both. Inside pushing out. Does it have a shape, size, or color? It's a little red-black marble. I have a weight, temperature, texture. Kind of cold and heavy. Anything else about it? Yeah, it hurts. It throbs. How old might I be when I first feel this? Heard number 10. I was like, I think I'm making this up, right? 10. Where might I be when I'm 10? I heard altar boy meeting. I was like, oh, well, I was an altar boy. It's like, okay, altar boy meeting. What happens then when I'm 10 at an altar boy meeting? And it's like, Huey, I won't say because we're broadcasting live, he could be listening, but Huey and one of the kids from my grade school class was sitting behind me and plucking me on the ear. Repeatedly, I said, this is Huey plucking me on the ear during the altar boy meeting. And I remember he did it like so many times, he thought the Monsignor, who looked kind of like Herman Munster, was not going to respond, and so, or I wouldn't do anything with the Monsignor in the room. But I actually flew out of my chair. I think I was strangling the big bully, in front of the Monsignor, and I don't remember anything after that. So obviously the Monsignor separated us, and he never touched my ear again. I think it was like, psycho kid is going to come after me or something, and fly at me. But anyway, the point was it didn't matter. By then, obviously the ear is already traumatized. And 20, 30, 40 years later, it becomes a cyst. And like, this is Huey, and he did it hundreds of times prior to that. I was like, this is a level 2 trauma. Level 1 is a single moment. Level 2 is when it happens repeatedly to the point where it builds up. It becomes a health crisis. It becomes a strong, threatening energy, a cancer, an illness, a tumor. It's like, hello, there's a trauma here. We haven't always been listening and talking to it correctly. But if you talk, the exciting part was the 6th breakthrough I had is when I worked on a cancer patient. The body mapped a series of memories that created the illness or the weakness in her immune system and contributed to the cancer. It didn't cause it, but contributed to the cancer. It's like, oh my goodness, if we talk to the body correctly, it will teach us how to heal. So with the ear, I said, if I could go back and change this scene. See, I'm not in the altar boy meeting anymore, but my ear doesn't know that. So I had to prove to my ear that it was safe. So what did I do? I said, if I could change that scene, what would I see happen? Well, come to find out, Huey's father had some issues with drinking and was a deputy sheriff, and that's how he probably had issues and so on and maintained the issues. I'm going to give him a sober father. We're going to picture us playing together. We had a mutual friend we played with together peacefully one time, I remembered. We're going to all play peacefully together. And what color frame would I put around a picture of not being bullied? I saw yellow and green. Started running the colors through my ear repeatedly. Within 2 days, it was shrinking. By the 4th, 5th day, it was almost gone. And if you don't believe me, you can come poke my ear after the lecture, after the presentation. All I have left is a little bit of scar tissue, and it never bothered me again. I had a woman heard my lecture one time and had a lump in her breast that was malignant and was scheduled for a lumpectomy. And she came into my office. No, she emailed me after. She came up to me after the lecture and said, thank you. I didn't know why she was thanking me. She was an artist and knew her colors. I said, thank you. I know my colors. I think I can use this on myself. She didn't tell me she had a lump in her breast and was scheduled for a lumpectomy. She emailed us about 3 weeks later and said, I wanted to thank you because, and she also emailed the general manager at Miraval, where I worked part of the time, which, by the way, is now Hyatt owned also. But she emailed us and said, thank you so much. She said, I started using my colors over the site in my breast where the tumor is located because I thought I knew the memory. And I ran colors for a few minutes every day at the site. When I went in to do the lumpectomy after I got home, almost 2 weeks later, the doctor looked baffled, came back, did a few more scans, and said, there's nothing here to operate on. It's not there anymore. So if it's memory-based, you have any idea how powerful you are. If it's not environmental, genetic, or genetic even, you have influence over, environmental or some other source, you're very powerful. I've never been more confident because when you find the right color and you move it through your body with the archaeology piece, 7-color projection system, your colors are not my colors. I can't put some healers can tap into and merge their colors with yours and heal things, but then who gets the credit for the healing? I suppose the guru, the facilitator, the healer. I'm not interested in being that. I'm interested in you being your own medicine woman in this lifetime. You can heal it infinitely faster. And we have so many memories. I could spend months with you and we probably wouldn't get to all the memories, right? So what's our goal? That we, on a regular basis, we're mindful, we meditate. We do a little time each week with mindful meditation about memories. And what we found is where you're most often, even the great Tibetan masters, where they get stuck in their meditations is almost every case that I've seen turns out to be a memory of some sort of trauma. I can't wait to scan the Dalai Lama and see if as an empath I pick up China. I want to see what's going on there. Does he still have his China trauma? Has he cleared it? You know, because we assume, I've worked with a great many very well-known healers and so on, and I'm always shocked, like, I shouldn't be anymore. We're all human beings with a trauma history. And we've just begun as a species to reverse the genetic accumulation of trauma. The children that are coming in at higher vibrations and frequencies. That's exciting. And with these techniques, if we get to them soon enough, we can keep them clear longer. And then I can retire and not have to do this for a living, or not have to do it for so long. People can replace, where our goal is, it took me some decades actually to learn the vibrational sensitivity. I had one of the trainees who took Barbara Brennan energy healing. I showed her the technique. She was shocked by it. 2 months later, she announced she's going to become a Brennan energy healer. Got her master's in energy psychology and with the Brennan School, and has been doing it ever since. And was very, very excited because I saw her scan the heart meridians when I showed her that we have meridians over the heart that store our relationship history. And when she scanned the heart, she's like, oh, did you have something happen with your father when you were about 10? I was like, it took me 5 years to figure that out. She did it in like 3 weeks. And she's so energy sensitive. She's like, did you have something happen with your father? There's a stabbing pain on your male meridian to the left of your heart. And I was like, you got it. And she's like, yeah, my father died when I was 10. So the good news is, the longer you've been doing this, if you've done meditation, yoga, when I scan you, you've been doing yoga, I'm like, oh, it's hard to find your traumas. Your vibration is much higher than the standard individual, the average person who has not. Because your vibration, doing yoga, meditation, energy psychology, these things raise your vibration and will at least sustain you until you can fully clear the memories. I have people that have done every imaginable trauma resolution therapy. And 5 to 15% of all therapies, when you just focus on a memory, will release from the body. But there's another 85 to 95% that's waiting for you to speak personally to the memory. And if you don't put your key in the lock and prove that you're safe in 2019, some memories will not release. So by all means, find the scenes where you froze. Breathe into them, tap into them, bring in the colors, the vibration, sound. You can access a memory. That's where EFT, TFT, energy psychology, some of you do that part, can tap into it through vibration, access the meridian. I simply say, how young are you? And use the voice to locate the icon, click it, see where you froze, and insert safety. Now the safety can be inserted through sound, feeling, color, vibration. I listened to a CD called The Drone by Harold Moses. He's generating something called harmonic fractal fifths. Fifth intervals in music were sacred in Egypt, kind of a thing. But C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. He's generating the harmonic fractal fifths. I listened to the one for throat and accessed 8 memories using sound. It created the perfect field around the throat. 8 memories came up. I put in the missing colors and it released from my throat. That doesn't always happen with music, but the favorite. I can also tell you this as a chapter in my new book, and I'll close with that. I'll open to questions actually for the next half hour. There's a chapter in my new book called You're Wearing Your Solution. Now, some of you are a little OCD-ish, you're going to freak out on this one, okay? You're going to start analyzing your closets and your clothes. There's a chapter called You're Wearing Your Solution, because I'll tell you this, 50% of the time, if I do work with you, you're going to walk into my office wearing the color, exact color that you would use to reframe or complete your most traumatic memory. In fact, if I were to guess, coming to a trauma lecture, you might be wearing one of your primary healing colors today. And we could go to the spectrum. But you're genius, you're brilliant, you know all your colors. And black can be calm, elegant, relaxing. Greens, healing, forest greens, very healing, grounding. You're a grounding person. White, whites and blues. There you go. All right, we're ready. Ooh, sky blue, brilliant blues. Very nice. Now we have blacks and whites flowing. There's some colors in there that are peeking through. That's good. We got radiant flowers over here and against a navy blue background, I think, probably. So peach, nurturing, peach, pinks, peaches, all in the nurturing spectrum. We got a whole rainbow over here. There you go. She wore all her colors today for us. Lime green in front of me directly, physical healing. So colors. What colors? Those of you that are watching, assuming that you're wearing something besides a bathrobe, what colors are you wearing right now? What are your healing colors? 50% of the time, we wear the colors we need and surround ourselves with. What card did you get? What color is your house? Did you repaint your bedroom? We surround ourselves with the frequencies we need all the time. Music, sound, color, vibration. All of it is very, very powerful. So I encourage you to use your color resources. We have color is an infinite language. Words are very finite. We say red. Really now, come on, folks. Infinite number of reds, greens, blues, yellows. The colors you're seeing for your memories are not my colors. They're unique to your perception. So we're learning how to move those frequencies through your body. Many ways to do that. I now feel also vibration often with the colors. One of my clients can transpose all of her senses. She can smell sounds. She can feel colors. And she actually works for one of the world's leading, perfume companies, because she can sniff, smell, feel, and intuit your energy and come up with the perfect perfume smell that will match all of that. So she's considered like a prize person. She has that sensory, I forgot what we call it, sensory inversion and interchange capacity. So you never know. All of these little traumas and things that happen to us can bring gifts with them as well.
I did some HMR work with one of your practitioners. We met one time, long time ago.
You look familiar.
And maybe different hair color.
Ah.
Is there some vibration there? I don't know. But I did some work with her, and I felt like there was some relief, but I'm still caught to the same thing. So I did it for like a year, and I don't know, could it be, I'm very stubborn. Maybe I haven't been able to release. I still struggle with depression after so many years of psychology and energy healing and IFS and HMR. And,
Gotcha.
I can name every acronym in the book. So I'm just wondering, is there a point where it just releases? Am I still holding on? Is it possible that I could still be holding on to it even after all this work I've done?
There is. A possibility that the longer I've done this, I realize that there are times when some memories, for instance, require more than one solution. Like part of me wants it to, you mentioned IFS, so you've identified the fact that along with a single moment of trauma, we can have parts that memories get together and form the critical part, the sad part, the lonely part, the angry part, the controlling part. We can have adult managerial parts, adolescent behavioral parts, and child wounded parts. So one part, for instance, I found might want the accident to not happen, but the other part that practitioners sometimes miss is when it did happen, Dad yelled at me for wrecking the car because he's a narcissist instead of worrying about whether I was dead or alive. So they reframed the accident, but they didn't reframe part 2. So any part of that left intact will represent as memory. It can be quite complicated. So when you mention the parts, putting that together, I'm a matrix thinker. You show me your history, at least a little bit, I'll give you the parts. There's a possibility that some of those memories had a second piece to it. So I would reframe both. Part of me wants it to not happen, and part of me says if it did happen, I need to have proper caregivers respond properly to me. That's an example how if a part is left, I would just check, if it's gotten better but is not gone, we're missing some of the memories still. I'm pretty well convinced.
With someone that oversleeps? Oh, sorry. Do I have to?
Oversleeping?
Yeah.
Yes. So there are several things. I mean, there's narcolepsy too, okay, that's a sleeping disorder. Mm-hmm. And you got to go through that little checkout. But what I look for in that history, she said, people that are oversleeping, is I had clients that come in wide awake. I put my hand on C7 and I say, what are you feeling? Really anxious, fearful. How old are you? 5. And suddenly they're falling asleep. They're passing out. So when they were depressed as children, they went to sleep. That's what they did. So you got to find the little part of you before she goes to sleep and say, hello, what's happening? What happened to you? It would be nice if you could stay awake and play with me. We like to enjoy life and have fun and be active, and do some things exciting together. Life isn't meant to be sad or depressed or whatever. Especially look for early trauma, or if there was something really, we found weird things, like there's been an article published that people that cut sometimes had early childhood surgeries, which when you're sick, you have a surgery and fix it. You cut to do something. So there's been a few discussions about that. So what I look for in those cases, if there's a strong sleep mechanism, I will always check to see if something happened in the womb or early on where it was just so loud or noisy or contentious. If there's domestic violence, people have sleep disorders. They either go to sleep or they can't sleep. If there was a lot of fighting at nighttime, and nighttime wasn't safe when daddy came home drunk and you never knew what he was going to do, then there could be an insomnia issue that's tied to memory. Otherwise, I'm not sure. Check blood sugar levels too, hypoglycemia, things like that for, loss of energy. That'll suddenly put you to sleep really fast. So that can be a trigger. But a sign of major depression is sleeping too much or not being able to get rest. So I would check on that a little bit.
Do you have a specific thing that you do that could...
Oh, actually, yes. There's a couple things you can do for sleep. If it's a baby, I had one client I was working with, and she's like, do you do anything baby wants? I can't get the baby to sleep. Healing Touch has a chakra opening or chakra balancing technique where you... thank you, Healing Touch people. I'm going to share this if it's okay with you, wherever you are out there. But basically, if you want to open your chakras and release any tension, every joint, hand on the base of the foot to the ankle for about a minute, ankle to knee, knee to hip. Repeat the same thing on the other side, foot to ankle, ankle to knee, knee to hip, about a minute on each side, then both hips. And then dominant hand over your root chakra to sacrum, sacrum to solar plexus to heart. Then you do hand. There's about a minute or two on each. You can do longer if you want. Wrist, elbow, shoulders. So you're opening all the joints of the body for energy flow. Then you do heart to throat, throat to crown, throat to third eye, and third eye to crown. And then what I do is put one on the top and open to divine light coming in through this arm and shooting back down through your body. And that, if you do that on an infant for about 30 seconds at each joint, often they relax and go to sleep and stop crying. Because it's about sensitivity and energy flow, and they're very powerful with that. So that's one thing you can do. The other is very simple. I have it on my CDs, but take your safe scene color. If it's blue, especially if it's blue or a very relaxing waterfall color, ask, what color do I need to sleep? And start running that color through your body from your head down. You can do it as a vibration or a sound if you wanted. Some people sleep better with a sound in the background. I listen to audiobooks with very nice voices sometimes in the background, and puts me to sleep. But run the color through your body slowly from your head down. If the right color hits the nerve center that's keeping you awake and makes it relax, you'll go to sleep immediately. It will knock you out. So when I need to take a short power nap and I'm working on 8 clients in a day, 1.5 sessions, and suddenly somebody has to leave early or I get a half an hour break, yesterday I put myself into an alpha theta state in about 90 seconds. And I actually went into REM sleep and actually was dreaming and was gardening somewhere in my dream, and then came out 23 minutes later and was very rested. So I can actually send myself into a pretty altered state fairly quickly using color. Or you could do a vibration like a sound of a voice or somebody that's really favorite, or waterfall. If you do a waterfall from your head down, that can help. But if you ask, what color do I need to help me sleep? Or what color do I need to help me pass this exam? Your body will generate a color for you if you ask the question. and you keep running. Anything you move through the body 52 times, your body's already done it. So you can always try picturing really restful sleep. As a hint, sometimes I sleep off planet or I sleep in my safe place. If you create a wonderful safe scene that we created, right? Add a beach house to your beach. Add a cabin in the mountains. I had a client this week. We created a bedroom, the perfect bedroom in her woods scene, so that when she's having trouble and dealing with the divorce and other stuff with her husband, she's now sleeping in her specially prepared bedroom in her mind before she goes to bed at night with the perfect bed, the perfect mattress, the whole thing is there. So if you can get creative with it, you're actually using meditation. It's a Tibetan focusing technique you're using to create a detailed three-dimensional image with all your senses, smell, sound, feeling, touch, to create an enhanced safe place. And if it gets too much down here, sometimes I go to my sort of a space station bedroom, kind of thing. And if you ever notice you get to 35,000 feet on an airplane, you'll start seeing colors. If you meditate, you'll see brighter colors. When you're above the muck and the mire down here in the chaos mentally, your colors get brighter. And so that's sometimes helpful to imagine even sleeping. So I got more than you bargained for with the question, but these are all things you can use to kind of get yourself into a relaxed place.
My daughter, when she gets really stressed, and this has always happened in her life, her hair falls out.
Yes, that's not uncommon. Actually, she's creating a hormonal response from the stress. And I have a client that does that too. When she gets overly stressed and she's a little OCD-ish and kind of freaks out and she starts to panic about things, then it's hormonal. You are causing increased stress, and the adrenaline increase can cause hair loss. So I'm not sure how they're treating that nowadays the best. I do know that if you can get her to create her safe scene, do color relaxation, it's just not worth your health going to a stressful place. We've got to learn to be calmer, go to a calmer place. But there could be an OCD feature to this or something. My client that loses hair, she goes in an OCD cycle, goes up really fast, and that's when the hormonal changes are sudden. Then you do get alopecia or hair loss and things of that sort. Interesting, though, but calming. So that's a tricky one.
Thank you so much. It's very interesting. And you said you're going to share the technique, how to clear. Yeah, level 2, how to clear once a month.
Let's do that before we close. We might have time, one more question. We'll see how we do time-wise. Close your eyes. Let's do level 2. Level 2 is a pattern. Growing up with an alcoholic parent, emotionally unavailable parent, depressed, bipolar, narcissistic parent. Second grade teacher hated you. First girlfriend, boyfriend was psycho. First marriage could be a shadow marriage. Boss, employer, organization, religious system, political system. A lot of people have post-traumatic election disorder right now. I'm just teasing you, regardless of who you voted for. Could be having an addiction, chronic physical, mental, emotional pain condition is level 2. So what I'm going to do is show you a simple technique. You might need to go into more detail when you get a chance for just releasing. It could be a person, a marriage, a relationship, a job you're letting go of, a situation at work, but it's a pattern. So close your eyes, take yourself to your safe scene. Now let's go to your, let's do stress. We'll do an emotion today. Let's pile up all your stress and tension for the last 3 months, 6 months if you want. Can you see how big your stress pile would be out here on the grounds of the Theosophical Society? We're going to have to call the gardeners probably after this, right? So you could pile up all your stress outside. If you could line up behind the stress pile, everybody contributing to it. Ask the pile to show you. Who all has been freaking you out, stressing you out? Can you see who's in the lineup? Loved ones, friends, family, other people. Line them all up in front of you. Now, we're not going to be malicious, but pile up in front of them what you can't fix. What you absolutely cannot change, what's not your stuff. Their stuff, even the people we love the most. We can't change certain little eccentricities and habits and addictions and choices they make. We're not going to change that. We can try having a discussion. So give them back all their stuff. Pile up in front of them what's theirs. The job, the business, the boss, the government, whoever. Pile it up in front of them. You need to do this at least monthly, if not weekly and sometimes daily. Pile it up in front of them. Can you see how big the piles are? Okay. Now let's ask their angels, their guides, their higher self, I had one woman once say, I don't think my ex-husband had one of those. Higher self. I was like, oh, Lord, okay. Anyway, so pile up in front of them their stuff. If you give them all back their stuff, ask their angels and guides to help them heal when they're ready. When I worked at Miraval, there was a guy who used to give lectures there, Albert Golden, who said once, if you want to know your karma, look at your parents. But he said, how dare you take away another person's chance to heal by imposing your timetable and your colors, your willpower on them? It's not going to work. Children, we have influence to 18, 19. But you can't make your parents heal or recover or go to therapy. I know I tried in college. It's not going to happen, right? So give them all back their stuff so they can heal when they're ready. Now go back to your pile. How much of your pile is left that actually belongs to you? Can you see how much is left that's actually yours from all that stress? Now that saying, God, the universe never gives us more than we can handle. What beautiful colors come to you to help you manage your pile, your stress? Can you see what colors come to you to help you manage yours? I'll give you a little extra clue. If you wanted to lose a couple of 100 pounds tonight, I'll show you how to do it, okay? We'll emotionally diet the body. How much food do you need to eat for the pile that's left? Because if you're an empath, you've been eating for the size of the original pile. If you've been taking on everybody's stuff, you've been eating for everybody, and you wonder why you can't lose weight. You're eating for the size of Wheaton. Come on, give me a break. Give everybody back their stuff. How much is yours? Picture your body changing when you just eat for you. And run the nutritious colors, not food. Run the colors you need to be whole and complete. And you'll notice your appetite drops by about 60%. Your thyroid speeds up a little bit. You exercise, you can see the results right away. And you're going to feel lighter by the end of the day. Because you're dieting your emotional body. The more colors you eat, the lighter you get. You get closer to white light. The more colors I'll repeat that, the more colors you ingest through vibration, sound, energy, frequency, the more colors you ingest, the lighter you get. The more food you eat, the heavier we get. It works inversely. It's what Overeaters always taught. It's not what you're eating that's your problem, it's what's eating you. So if we heal what's eating us and add the missing colors, we get lighter. If we try to eat our way through it with food, we're going to have more challenge with that. I work a lot with eating disorder stuff. So we're losing weight today. We're losing emotional weight. We're losing all the stuff that isn't ours. You are allowed to heal and transform what's yours and children's issues. We can help them with that. But we cannot force ourselves on the healing path of another. That's not very thoughtful, mindful. So breathe your colors through your body one more time. Nice. And whatever colors you needed to replace the pile that isn't yours, and to help you focus on being present to what you can heal. The greatest gift you can give yourself and those around you is a healthy you, free of trauma. So breathe your colors through your body, and then when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
A practitioner under you said to me, because I think so much and I'm so obsessive, that I should run the colors from down to up.
Ah, yes, that's a good point.
True?
Yep, did this earlier today with someone. So if you're stuck in your head a lot and you're like, I have trouble moving the colors too, I had a lot of stuff happen in my head. Well, yeah, you perceive most of your traumas from mental states. So what I'll say is run the colors from your feet up like a fountain. And they're like, oh, yeah, I had somebody yesterday do that. And they're like, oh, it flowed through beautifully. It went through really, really fast, much faster, rather than from my head down. I'm a thinker, I always process in my head a lot. So I found that sometimes running colors from your feet up is much, much lighter, much easier to do. You can also breathe in the color. Breathe it through your body.